not as a belief, not as a doctrine, but as something you've felt in quiet moments, when the world falls silent and something inside you begins to speak. You're not here just to be entertained. You're here because something in you is searching for peace, for meaning, for the missing part of yourself. This isn't just a video, it's a mirror for the part of you that no one sees. If you stay, you won't just learn about Jung, you'll begin to see your own life in a new way, through the lens of the soul. Carl Jung believed that beneath the surface of every person lies a deeper self, one not ruled by fear or ego, but by truth. He called it the Psyche. But make no mistake, to Jung, this was not sterile science. This was sacred ground, a temple hidden within your unconscious. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. These words are not metaphor, they are medicine. Because if you're tired of pretending, if you're carrying wounds you don't fully understand, if you've reached success but still feel empty, then it may be time to turn inward. This is not therapy, it's a pilgrimage, not to fix yourself, but to find yourself. To Jung, the soul wasn't a poetic idea, it was the source of life itself. It speaks to you through dreams, through symbols, through the quiet ache you feel when your life no longer reflects who you really are. And most people never hear it, because they're too distracted, too busy, too afraid to listen. But not you. You're here. And that matters, because to truly awaken, you must walk through the door that most never open. Not a church door, not a temple in the mountains, but the door that leads inward, into the cathedral of your own soul. This is where your journey begins. Welcome to the inner temple. Have you ever prayed? Not with words, but with longing. Maybe you didn't call it prayer. Maybe you just stood under the stars and felt small and somehow sacred. Or maybe, in your darkest moment, you whispered into the silence, and something inside whispered back. That's what Carl Jung understood. Religion was never just about belief. It was about the soul speaking to itself, in symbols. He didn't see religion as an institution to be obeyed, but as a living mirror of the psyche. The gods, the rituals, the sacred texts, they were expressions of something within us, not outside. Because every religion, at its core, speaks the language of the unconscious, light and darkness, death and rebirth, sacrifice, redemption, eternity. Jung believed that behind every cross, every mandala, every chant, there was an archetype, a universal image rising from the depths of the human soul. He called it the religious function of the psyche, a natural instinct to find meaning through the sacred, not to explain the universe, but to understand ourselves. We are meaning-seeking beings. We build cathedrals not just out of stone, but out of dreams. And when those dreams are dismissed as fantasy, something essential is lost. That's why so many feel empty today, not because they lack information, but because they lack connection to something larger, older, wiser than the ego. Have you ever noticed how certain moments feel holy, not because of where you are, but because of how deeply you feel? A child's birth, a loss that cracks you open, a dream that haunts you for years. These are religious experiences, not defined by dogma, but by depth. And they're not rare. They're happening all the time, if you have the eyes to see. Jung didn't want to revive religion. He wanted to restore the soul behind it, to show that what we once called God may be the self trying to reach us through symbols. This is not the end of faith. It's the beginning of real, inward reverence, not for the heavens above, but for the unconscious within. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Stories. They're older than empires, older than language itself. Before we had science, we had myth. Before we had diagnosis, we had dragons. and Carl Jung believed we still do, just hidden under the surface of our modern minds. To Jung, myths weren't lies. They were truth told in symbols, truths so deep that only stories could carry them. Why do we still speak of heroes and monsters? Why do we dream of falling, flying, being chased, being reborn? Because your soul doesn't speak English. It doesn't think in bullet points. It speaks in images, symbols, and archetypes, the same ones carried by myths for thousands of years. Jung spent decades decoding those stories, not to reduce them, but to reveal their meaning. Prometheus stealing fire wasn't just a Greek tale, it was the awakening of human consciousness. The descent of Inanna wasn't just Sumerian poetry, it was the feminine ego descending into the unconscious. Christ's crucifixion and resurrection wasn't just religion, it was the eternal drama of death and transformation. You see, these stories live in all of us. Even if you've never read them, you've lived them. Every time you've lost yourself in chaos and clawed your way back, every time a part of you had to die so something stronger could be born. This is myth, not as entertainment, but as inner cartography, a symbolic map of your psyche. And the reason Jung held myths in such reverence is because they made people feel seen. When therapy wasn't enough, when words failed, myth gave people meaning. It reminded them that their suffering wasn't meaningless. It was part of a story, a sacred one. So if you've ever felt broken, lost, or out of place, ask yourself, what myth are you living? Not what's your job, not your title, but your myth. Are you the wanderer, the healer, the one who sacrifices for others? Are you stuck in the underworld, or finally returning from it? Because once you understand the myth you're in, you can choose how it ends. And that's the gift Jung gave us. Not answers, but a language. A way to hear the soul again through the stories it's always told. You've felt it before. A moment when everything falls apart, when the life you built begins to dissolve. You lose someone, you lose yourself, and something dark begins to rise inside you. Most call it crisis. Jung called it alchemy, not the kind that turns lead into gold, but the kind that transforms a shattered soul into something whole. Alchemy, Jung wrote, is the symbolic language of the unconscious. It is the story of inner transformation, told in fire, shadow, and light. The ancient alchemists believed in 4 stages of transformation. Jung believed these mirrored the deep work of the psyche. 1. Nigredo, the blackening, the breakdown, the darkness, the stage where you're forced to confront everything you've denied, your shadow, your rage, your fear, your grief. This is the descent into the unconscious, and it's terrifying, but it's necessary because you cannot heal what you won't face. 2. Albedo, the whitening cleansing, insight, a dawning light after darkness. Here, you begin to separate truth from illusion. You start to see who you are beneath the roles, beneath the mask. In dreams, this stage often appears as a white figure, a child, or a guide. The psyche begins to reorder itself, but gently. 3. Citrinitas, the yellowing, awakening. Wisdom starts to emerge. Consciousness begins to integrate. This is the golden glow before the full transformation. The ego becomes less rigid, more aligned with the self. 4. Rubedo, the reddening, the final stage. Integration, the marriage of opposites, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, spirit and matter. It's not about perfection, it's about wholeness. In alchemical images, this stage is symbolized by the divine union, the king and queen merging, or the phoenix rising from flame. And Jung believed this wasn't metaphor. This was the soul's reality. When your world falls apart, your psyche is beginning its work, not to destroy you, but to remake you. We often resist this process. We numb it. We deny it. But those who embrace it emerge different, not fixed, but forged. You do not become whole by pretending to be perfect. You become whole by burning and rising. Alchemy is not science. It's not superstition. It's the deepest truth the soul knows. That pain has purpose. That descent is part of ascent. That nothing truly precious is born without transformation. So if you are in the fire now, stay there. Something ancient is working in you. And when it is done, you won't just heal, you will shine. There is a place in you that you've never fully touched. Not your personality, not your thoughts, but the quiet center, the still point beneath all the noise. Carl Jung called it the self, not the ego, the part of you that performs, protects, and pretends, but the self, the totality of who you are, known and unknown, light and shadow, conscious and unconscious. To Jung, the self wasn't just a psychological concept. It was sacred, the closest thing to God that lives within us. In dreams, it might appear as a luminous child, a wise elder, a mandala, or a divine figure, not to impress you, but to remind you that there is more to you than your trauma, more than your labels, more than your wounds. The self is the soul's architecture, and every true spiritual experience is a moment when the ego touches it, however briefly. That's why Jung saw the symbols of God in psychology, not as blasphemy, but as integration. Because what we've called God across cultures, the light, the center, the voice, the inner fire, is also the self trying to guide us home. This is not about becoming divine. It's about remembering that you were never separate from it. The journey of healing is not just emotional, it's existential. It's the long return from fragmentation to wholeness, from forgetting to remembering. That's why the ego fights so hard, because to approach the self means surrendering control, letting go of certainty, and stepping into mystery. But those who do, even for a moment, describe it the same way. Peace, meaning, unity, not in theory, in experience, not in church, but in the silence within. The self is both the center and the circumference, Jung wrote. It embraces both the conscious and unconscious. You don't find it in books. You don't earn it through perfection. You recognize it in your dreams, your symbols, your deepest longings, because the God you seek may already be inside you. Have you ever woken from a dream and felt haunted, like it meant something, like it knew something about you that you hadn't yet admitted to yourself? Jung believed that wasn't a coincidence. It was a message. The dream, he said, is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. While the modern world treats dreams as noise, fragments of stress and memory, Jung saw them as sacred texts written in the language of the unconscious, symbols, scenes, encounters that seem absurd until they begin to reveal something real. A woman dreaming of a staircase into darkness, a man wandering a burning house, a child meeting a radiant being in a field. These aren't just stories, they are maps, and if you learn to read them, they can change your life. In dreams, the soul doesn't lie. It shows you who you are and who you're becoming. Jung's patients would come in with dreams that terrified them, but through careful exploration, those images became mirrors. A cave wasn't just fear, it was a descent into hidden truth. A dying father wasn't loss, it was the ending of old authority. A strange child wasn't nonsense, it was the birth of a new self. This was more than therapy, it was initiation, because Jung knew something we often forget. The psyche doesn't speak in straight lines, it speaks in myth, poetry, and vision. And when the outer world stops making sense, the inner world begins to speak louder. Have you been dreaming more lately? feeling drawn to strange images, recurring symbols, people who don't exist but feel familiar. Don't dismiss it. Don't run. That might be the self knocking. Spiritual breakthroughs don't always happen in temples. Sometimes they come at 3 a.m. in the middle of a dream you can't forget, because your soul is always trying to reach you, through stories, through silence, through symbols you don't yet understand. But if you stay with them, if you ask, not, "What does this mean?" but, "What is this showing me?" you might find the beginning of something sacred. The psyche is not broken, it's speaking, and dreams are its sacred voice. You are not here to stay the same. That quiet ache you feel, the sense that something in your life is off, misaligned, incomplete, it's not a flaw, it's a call. Jung called it individuation, the sacred journey of becoming who you truly are. Not the version you've performed, not the identity shaped by approval or survival, but the whole self, your conscious mind, your shadow, your inner child, your divine center, united into one. This is not about self-improvement. This is self-return. Individuation is the spiritual path hidden inside everyday life. It doesn't start in monasteries or mountaintops. It begins when something breaks. A relationship ends, a dream dies, a mask slips, and you're left with a question you can't ignore anymore. Who am I really, underneath it all? The journey is never linear. You'll descend before you rise. You'll meet parts of yourself you've long buried: fear, guilt, rage, grief. Jung saw this not as failure, but as initiation. Just like the myths, the hero must go underground. The seeker must face the dragon. The soul must walk through fire to be reborn. And you're no different. To individuate is to integrate, to make peace between light and shadow, between your wounds and your wisdom, between the mask you wear and the soul you've forgotten. It is the most personal journey you will ever take, and yet it is universal. Every human being, if they live long enough and honestly enough, will face this crossroads. Do I remain who the world expects me to be, or do I follow the call inward, into the wild unknown, and risk becoming myself? That's the real spiritual life, not following rules, but listening to the self, to the dreams, to the story unfolding in your unconscious. And when you return, you don't come back with answers. You come back with truth. Jung didn't offer salvation. He offered integration, not escape from suffering, but meaning within it. Because the goal is not perfection, it is wholeness. And this journey, your journey, is not an escape from the world. It is the path home. You've worn the mask. You've played the role. You've survived the world's expectations. But now, it's time to come home. Not to a religion, not to a system, but to something deeper. The temple was never out there. It was always inside you. The symbols you dream, the stories you love, the moments that crack you open. These are not distractions. They are messages from the self, the God within. Jung didn't give us a new belief. He gave us a mirror to see that every descent is sacred, every shadow is part of the whole, and every soul is a mystery unfolding. So ask yourself, not for answers, but for truth, because the greatest journey isn't across mountains or oceans, it's the one that leads inward. And if you're ready, the soul is waiting, the symbols are speaking, and your true self is calling you home.